Hello, welcome to the Pmm on Kubernetes talk. My name is Kondratenko. I am working at Percona 1 year and 5 months. I work on the Pmm product as engineering manager, so I manage other developers as well as a personal contributor. Pmm is Percona monitoring and management solution to observe your database infrastructure performance and health and whatnot. So you could go and read documentation here on our website. And today I would be talking about how to run it at Kubernetes, right? So we would like to measure your performance whenever your database is running, and one of the use cases you could run your databases in Kubernetes cluster with our operators, and Pmm could be used to also monitor and manage your databases there. You can connect it from the outside as the Docker container or like a cloud image. But it makes sense, and probably it's better for some users to run the Pmm on the same infrastructure, right? So if you're already running everything in Kubernetes, it's much more easier to manage everything centrally and run the Pmm inside the Kubernetes as well. So recently we started to add this feature for running Pmm in Kubernetes, and I will be talking about that right now. So how to get started? First of all, we created the Helm chart for the Pmm. There is the Helm chart repository that is available in our GitHub, and here are the sources for those Helm charts. So you can see a number of different Helm charts over here. So one of them is quite fresh one, is the Pmm. So we choose the Helm chart as a deployment tool for Kubernetes because it's quite easy to use, and it's one of the de facto standards how to deploy the different applications and operators, anything, databases as well, into the Kubernetes. So to start with that, there is the README file. Currently this only technological preview, but we are planning to release it very soon in the production use cases. The development is still ongoing, but it's quite ready for you to try, and let's see how you can do that. So you need the recent Kubernetes versions that currently support it, and Helm 3. something, doesn't really matter, but here you can see the list of the requirements as well as the persistent volume provisioner, because we need the persistent volume for Pmm to store the data about the monitoring and its state and state of the agents. So it's quite easy, it's standard procedure. You add the Percona repository. It's located here on GitHub as well. It's published regularly when the new Helm charts landed. And you just simply install it, right, with default parameters, and simply uninstall it when you don't need it anymore. But the one thing to make sure is that it's actually removes the manifests and all of the Pmm tracks except the persistent volume. So persistent volume you need to delete manually if you have one. There are a set of parameters. This is a standard Helm parameters. Some of them standard Helm parameters, some of them are Pmm related. I will show you in a minute how that's organized. They all documented, most of them documented here, right? You can go and read everything. So there is image repo, there is the release tag. Current one is 2.28.0. But that will change, and we will update the Helm charts anyway. Image pool policy. This could be handy if not present. This default value. The Pmm images are quite large. They are 1 something gigabyte in size, so you probably would like to preload those images before updating, for example, or before starting the Pmm. For start, maybe that's like first start initialization, that is not that important, but for the update, it could take some time for for Kubernetes to download that new image. For example, when you will be updating from 2.28 to 2.29, then you would need, it's recommended probably that you would need to preload it into the Kubernetes cluster, so it will be found quickly and restart will be much shorter. If you wouldn't do that, like restart will take some time, depends on your internet. There should be no issues with interruption because we use, for the most of the metrics, we use the push mode with VM agent, so it actually caches a lot of metrics if it couldn't reach Victoria metrics, and same with agent, so they should cache it and push it when the Pmm starts available, but anyway, depends on your internet, right? So reduce the time to load the image. You could use if not present and preload it into the Kubernetes cluster. What else is here? Pmm environment. This is the environment variables that are defined in our documentation. The Pmm resources, this is done for the if you would need to limit or request resources from the Kubernetes which you want to allocate for Pmm. And secret name, secret password. This is secret name, you probably do not need to change. This is more or less standard, but initial password, if you wouldn't set this and it will be default as empty string, it actually will generate one. So it will init Pmm with generated password, and it's only during initialization phase. So if you will restart Pmm or something, this password will be ignored. But on first initialization, when you first time start Pmm, that password will be generated and updated in Pmm. So if you would like to have some specific password, you can change it here. And again, this will be only on the first deployment used, and it will be ignored on all other deployments. And I will show you how later. Certificates, if you would like to provide your Ssl certificates, you can do it here. What other important parameters are PVC. It's, for example, the storage class, so it's optional. It depends on your default storage class in the Kubernetes cluster you are provisioning, but for some of them you would need to specify where to store it. For example, there could be fast storage, there could be the slow storage, persistent, or maybe there some cache one that will be deleted. So this is a storage class you need to specify for some clouds, for example. I will show later Linode, and we will specify this. For default usage, you probably, if you don't know what to use, just use default, and it will select default provisioner for the storage. Storage size also depends on the how and what you would be monitoring. So there are some recommendation over here about that. And all other parameters. Let's see, and you can, as always, set it with the set string parameters, or as the values YAML file. So you can generate this file for example, how this is a way to generate it, and then just change some of the parameters in the YAML file. How this YAML file looks like, let's see the default one. So here we see all of these parameters, and actually that README was generated from this description. So same parameters, image, pull policy, repo, tag, and all of the stuff. You can also specify image pull secrets. Here are the Pmm environment. So as I said, you can read about this Pmm environment in our doc. So you can specify all of these environments, disable updates, which is specified, and I will explain why. Metric resolutions, or data retention, or Pmm debug, enable DBaaS. So here I am specifying enable. Here I'm specifying the disable updates, and why it's done, because this disables updates through the UI, so RPM way, and we do not need this because with the container replacement we do the update more in transaction way. So actually in the Kubernetes as well as in Docker, this method is much better when you update the full container. So your data is persisted on the persistent volume in a SRE directory, but everything else like system and Pmm is updated in other directories with container replacement. So this is recommended to have here. So always do disable updates. There is no sense to enable them for the Kubernetes or Docker deployment. So it's disabled. Here you can, for example, enable DBaaS and other parameters. There are also optional parameters like Grafana authentication and authorization for IDP. You can specify those parameters for Grafana, but you would need also specify the secrets for them later. And yeah, here is the secret that I told you before. So the name, it's actually prescribed, but you can select it. And password only for initial first deployment only. And you can get this password like that. If you would need this, you would get this password later if it's generated. So that's YAML file, and you changing the parameters here or on the command line. Yep. What else can we say about the Helm charts? Let's see. So you install it with the set of the parameters or with YAML file. Secret, right? So I will demo it, so we will see. You also could specify the Ssl certificates, as I said. So the Pmm comes with the self-signed certificates. Here you can specify your own if you have one. This is should be specified inside the YAML file, and you need to provide the content of your certificates and keys. That will be mounted inside the SRE directory to Nginx. So Nginx will then see those files. So this is actually the file name and content. File name and content that will be mapped as the volume to the container. Pmm updates, as I said, please, if you do modify the values default, leave this as disabled, because it makes no sense actually to have the UI update methods in the Kubernetes environment. And upgrades, when we release new container, when we release new Helm chart, you can update your Pmm deployment, specifying your YAML file with values that you defined. Maybe you have some customization or not, or you can do that with set parameters as well. Yep, and this is linked to the environment variables. Let's go and see how that Helm charts looks like. So there are secret service everything's the most interesting is Stateful Set, where we can see everything, but it's quite hard to figure out what is here. Maybe let's go and generate one template and see how the template looks like. So let's do it step by step, right? So let's do it by the book, by documentation, how we should use it. First, what we need to do is to have Helm repo installed, so we do that. I already have it, so I do not need to do that, but you would need to install it. So there is Helm install, but there is the special parameter for it, dry run, and we will try that first just to see how the manifests, rendered manifests, looks like. Yeah, we cannot do that because we have no Kubernetes cluster which Helm want to connect to. So Kubernetes cluster, I will use Minikube for this example. You can use Sky and all other deployments tools, but let me start the small Minikube cluster 1 node just for this example, and then we will try DBaaS, and we will start much larger cluster to deploy database as a service as well on this demo. Okay, it will be, I believe it will be quite fast. So we deploy the Kubernetes and Minikube 1 node. Done. Okay, cool. Let's check it out. Yep, it's ready. So we can do the dry run and try this out and see. Okay, cool. So right now with dry run, nothing was installed. It just showing us what will be installed, right? What will be configured in our cluster. So Pmm deployment name, as I specified it here. This is a chart name. And service account, we do not use service account currently, but in the future we will consume, we could enable the feature to consume the cluster automatically. So by consume I mean that Pmm will detect the cluster, start monitor it, and actually add it to DBaaS. So, and currently this service account could be turned on or turned off. You can do that here as well. So you just need to specify service account false. Yep, service account create. Currently it's true, but you can specify it false and then it will not be created. I recommend to leave it like that in the future versions of Pmm that allows us to consume the cluster or like monitor it automatically and also deploy the database service automatically. Next, secrets. That's our secrets, like Pmm admin password. You can see it here. It's not a password. This is a base 64 encoded password. It transfers like that into the init container and initialize it. So this is your secret Pmm admin password. Config map, here we transfer only disable updates as environment by default. Cluster role, this is for managing your Kubernetes cluster. So if we need to monitor it or to deploy databases, deploy operators, we need special cluster role for that. It also could be disabled, I believe, with service account. Cluster role building, same, and the service. So this is how your Pmm would be exposed. Here I use node port, specify the port which will be exposed from container. So this is how you expose your Pmm to outside world. So you can use node port, load balancer, and actually we have contribution from the community here, so you can, and soon we will support also ingress. So as soon as we will test it, we will probably land it, and the ingress also will be supported. What else? Stateful set. This is actually the Pmm Stateful Set resource, and as you see, it's connects to monitoring service to expose Pmm to the cluster and to outside world as the monitoring service. So it could be resolved by different agents and users and clients inside the cluster, inside this cluster as monitoring service, right? So then we have bunch of the labels, and to actually you can then select specify selector for the commands to get the Pmm, or it's also when we deploy something with Pmm, that also will be different labels over there for operators in the future as well. So that's actually to help you to recognize the Pmm stateful set inside the Kubernetes cluster. So what we have here, containers, Pmm, image, pool policy, secrets. Those secrets are empty currently, so if you not specify them, they are actually optional and empty. And this one is that was generated as I showed earlier. But we need these secrets as well. So if you would like to somehow configure the Grafana authentication, they're here for you. But we do not do that. We actually configure the external authentication with platform internally. But if you need this customization, it's here for you. Administration password also passed to the Pmm. We opened a couple of ports. 443 is our main one. We do not actually expose currently port 80, but in ingress controller it could be used for your also for your SSL termination if you would like to, and it's also used by the readiness probe here inside Pmm, inside the Kubernetes. We do mount the SRV, which is the persistent volume claim that we ask Kubernetes to provision for us. And the init container. This is something will be gone soon, as I believe in 2.29, because there is the ticket about that allows us to actually shift this into the entry point instead. But in 2.28 we still need this. What this does is actually detects if your SRV is empty, so that means that the persistent volume is completely empty, right? It's just fresh in provisions, and what it does, it's also set your password, and that's what I mean. It only works on the first init, only this way, and it's what it does is actually currently only copy needed file to init the SRV. In the new version, this will be done differently. Let me find the ticket and show you how. So in the new versions, that will be provisioned in a different way. So we're targeting that for 2.29, and this ticket will allow us to get rid of this init container. So there will be only one container over there. So that entry point will look like that. Inside of the entry point we have the changes which initialize the SRV if it's empty, and it does it in different way, right? So we do not need to copy everything, we just need to make standard procedure. And it also changes admin password, and it also changes admin password only if it's empty volume. So that's coming in the probably in 2.29 as well. So let's continue. This init container does initialization of the empty volume, will be gone in 2.29, but so far we need it. And that's where we mount the service for initialization. And here is the volume claim, which actually asks for volume for Kubernetes. And in the end, there is notes how to get your IP address, etc. So that was a dry run, so it does nothing. It just show you what we will be doing. So let's, as we have Minikube, right? Do we have Minikube still? Yep. Let's go ahead and deploy this. So currently there are no resources. Okay. So let's go and deploy it. I will be deploying it. Let's deploy it with some parameters. So I would like to deploy it, for example, with the DBaaS enabled, just for showcase. Or maybe let's do that. Let's currently just do the standard way to show you what will happen with the standard procedure. So okay, right now it's actually deployed the Pmm, and you can see that is initting. And what it does now is actually what I said. It actually tries to download the image. So if we can do that, you can. Okay, scribe Pmm 0, no resources time. Yeah, because I need to specify what I want to show. Yeah, so as you see, what it does, it's pulling the image, and as I said, that's some good storage needed for that. So it will take a little bit of time to download it. Okay, it's already done, so it took less than a minute and it's running. So, okay, it's running. How to figure out where it is? Okay, there is actually the hint how you can figure out where your Pmm is running, and it works in Minikube really well because Minikube exposes the containers to my host, so we can actually see. Okay, here's our Pmm is running here. Let's go and try to log in there. Oops. Alright, this is a standard. We have our self-signed certificate, so if you have your own, you can provide it. Alright, there is a login screen of Pmm. Success. And the only user provisioned is admin. The password, the standard password is admin as well, right? When you deploy it yourself. But this will not work. Yes, it's just because we also provisioned the password, so as well for the Pmm, as I said before. And to know your password, here is the hint as well. So you can do this. Okay, and you can just decorate your admin pass. Okay, here is our password. So it's a little bit secure for you. So you just copy paste it, and here we go. Success. And here we are in our Pmm running, right? So it's only one node on the cluster. It's currently doesn't know about the Kubernetes. It's just running inside the Kubernetes as the container, but we need to add Kubernetes as monitoring. So success, we have our Pmm, we can add services, we can add databases to monitor it inside, outside of Kubernetes. You have your, depends on the method of deploying, but you have your IP and the port, and inside the Kubernetes your Pmm could be resolved with the monitoring service DNS address. So, and we need to actually specify it here as well as monitoring service if we want Pmm to know that. So Pmm doesn't know what kind of address it has, right? So when it configures agents, it needs to know what DNS to use or what IP address to use to resolve, so the agents could resolve the Pmm error. You can do that manually, or you can do that with the API, which I will show a little bit later when we'll provision the DBaaS. So this is the first successful step. What we did is the standard procedure, hello report, install, and we used our hints in nodes to figure out the Pmm IP address, port, and the password. Okay, that's conclude our first part, where we do simple deployment of Pmm and Kubernetes. And the second part will be about DBaaS, and we will deploy the database as a service inside the same cluster. Okay, so let's start part 2 of this talk. Meanwhile, what I have done is deleted my cluster, because I need like that. So you just do minikube delete, and that will delete your cluster. I would like to create a little bit bigger cluster to deploy the databases with help of Pmm. So I run this command. I used KVM instead of Podman this time, and created a couple of nodes. So there are 4 nodes currently that were deployed. So let me then do the same procedure. Let's deploy the Pmm here in the new cluster. This time I will use the values. So let's do that. Let's create new values file. Okay, let's go and edit some of the parameters. What I would like to do is actually to change this password, for example. Yeah, anything like you should set up something more secure, or let Pmm generate one. And another thing that what I would like to do is also to enable DBaaS, because I would use that for cluster deployment. Okay, so that's my custom values file, and you can store that somewhere in your version, the Git or some other control version system for user deployment, for store, and all this stuff. So next, what I do is installing the Pmm, but this is something interesting here. What I would like to do is to deploy a couple of databases, and if Pmm, for example, can run. It's run as a root container, but the databases are run as rootless, and there is no bug in the minikube that needs a little bit more interaction. So we have 4 nodes where I would like to deploy databases, and what I need to do is to do a little bit of trick. There is the bug that I cannot provision the Pixie or PSMDB on the minikube with a couple of nodes, and there is a workaround for that, so I will just quickly do the workaround to be able to set up PSMDB or Pixie inside the minikube. What I'm doing is actually deleting the storage provisioner for the standard storage provisioner from Minikube. And what I do is to install in the custom provisioner, for example, in this case, Kubernetes. Kubernetes provisional, right? So you can read a lot more details in debug. I'm just executing this procedure. It's like 3 steps. So I just could apply that. Kube. What it does is installs different provisioner inside this cluster to be able to deploy PSMDB and Pixie cluster. Okay, cool. And the last thing, yeah, that's all I need to do. This changes nothing for PMM because PMM could run as root, so it's actually doesn't help PMM itself. It helps the PSMDB and Pixie operators to install correctly. I mean, it helps actually the Kubernetes fixes it. So let's start. Let's install PMM, same procedure, same result. So this time we installed with the custom YAML file. What we did in the YAML file is to change the DBaaS enabled and the password, right? So we can actually check if that works. Like let's check the admin pass. So we can do this, and yeah, let's check this password was correctly. Yes, this is stored in the secret now. So let's use our values file, which recommended to get into the Git or other version service, control version service. And now what I want to do is to see if my PMM, yes, PMM is running. Okay, it's just started and it's running. Okay, it's even ready. This time what I want to do is to use a little bit of API. I just get all the instructions needed to get it right. First of all, admin pass, right? So we have admin pass already, but let's do then the same procedure, node IP, node port. This is we adding all of this to the environment variables, right? And here I just created another one altogether. And what I also need is to be able to see URL correctly. Is I'm creating the key pair of user and password, and user is admin and password comes from admin. Okay, also kubectl, right? So this kubectl we will be using for the DBaaS to register this cluster. Okay, let's see if that worked. This is the API to check the version of PMM. Okay, that's worked. So we passed our encoded user password and we requested the API version, and it returned as indeed that we have to the 28 version server managed and distribution method so far is Docker, which is like we use same Docker container. So let's change some of the parameters then for PMM. Here let's do that. 1 second. Okay, let's change some of the parameter of PMM. Here I would like to change the public address monitoring service, which I know that I set up in my values YAML. This is a DNS for PMM, and I would like to enable DBaaS, but this will do nothing because we actually have this enabled inside of environment variable but anyway, let's do that just for sake of demo. So this method, what we did here is to pass to the parameters. The question arises where I find out these parameters, right? And the answer is that we have a nice API documentation under Percona Pmm README, where you can read and see and actually try a lot of the different APIs. So there are nice examples, as well as you can go and see how this API works. For example, changing admin password, settings. Let me find out. Yeah, get settings, change settings. So we use this change setting API over here. As you can see, settings change, and you can see that's like you can provide some parameters, and it will actually give you URL that you can use later in your application or in your CLI, or as in a script or whatever on the bash. So here you can find out, like, if you basic authentication, other authentication, etc., it will just form you. So here on this documentation you can find out all API and DBaaS API, everything, all API that Pmm supports. Here is a nice documentation with good, even like code snippet if you want, or like shell, whatever language you prefer. So here we are most interested in DBaaS API. There are good examples over here. For example, here's example how to change this public address that we did. We know we don't have IP. I mean, we have IP, but I used DNS instead, which is a recommended way to use the full DNS. And here's the example of how to enable DBaaS, and that's what exactly we did here. The same. So I passed the authentication and all of the other parameters to enable the DBaaS and set the public address. Next thing that I would like to show you is like how to register this cluster, right? So for that we use another API, which is also here is the example of it. There is a small bug. I am submitting the PR to fix this, so this you do not need these two dashes. Here's the here's what I use as the URL to register this DBaaS cluster. So I pass in the kubeconfig, and I think that shouldn't work. No, this should work, because the important thing here, if you would see the Pmm setup, sorry, there is a trick. So we take in the kubeconfig view flatten minify, which is in our documentation, but to use it in a script or in a bash, I need to actually replace some of the special characters and replace, I think, the new lines. I think new lines are actually the issue if you would like to pass it through the API. So the kubeconfig actually looks. So the provision stopped a little bit because I have a couple of pendings over here, just because I didn't create enough cluster for it. To find out what is wrong, you can go and, for example, do the describe of the pod that is not running. Okay. You would see that, yeah, I haven't not sufficient CPU for that big cluster. But anyway, for the demonstration purpose, I do not need this. I did show you how to add cluster, how to create database service, and also you would see all of the monitoring available over here. So we also have some experimental dashboard for the Kubernetes. We are trying to add a little bit more, so the Kubernetes got monitored. What we are doing is to actually adding more and more Kubernetes metrics and creating dashboards, and actually using the upstream dashboards as well to also provide you insights on the Kubernetes metrics. So yeah, let's finish this part. What we did is to install these values with help of Helm values. Let's maybe try to update this. I will show how update works. So if you will go and try to modify values YAML, once again, you can do that here. For example, let's try to deploy some completely different image, which is not recommended. It's only for development, but let's try development image for the sake of update. When you will be doing update, you do not need to actually modify this. The new Helm charts should have the new version over there, so we do maintain the default values. What will be recommended is actually to use customize. So do not use the values file from the from default, but use the customize to actually create your own values separately. So I will do update with my values file. So what I need is go to documentation and check it out. Yeah, so that's like done really easily, right? So with one command. Again, those values will be changed by us. So when you will do Helm upgrade and do not provide the values, that will be coming from Percona, where we will change the version. So let's see what happens. And you see that again, this is initializing. It's initializing. If you will describe the pod, what it does, it's actually pulling the new image, right? So yeah, you see that it's pulling new image, and then it will restart the container. That's why actually I recommend to maybe pre-pull the images, right? So that's image code will be already available in the cluster, and the initialization will take much more less time. It will just start instantly. Let's wait for it. I think it's will be around 1 minute. Yeah, you see, okay, that's running. Our Pmm already running with the new version. Right now this version is development one. But yeah, everything is done. Upgrade is done to the new version. What you would need to do is just do the upgrade from the with Percona values, for example, and that will do it. Okay, so what we showed up is the upgrade, setting the parameters for Pmm. Let's see if our cluster ready on the Linode, and let's try to see. Yeah, our cluster is ready. Okay, let's delete Minikube, so it will not consume all of the resources. I am downloading the kubeconfig to be able to access the cluster. Okay. So what I'm doing here, so I downloaded the kubeconfig file, and I use that to actually manipulate the remote cluster, right? So okay, I deploy the LKE cluster. I have access to it. Let's deploy the Pmm, but this time let's do it a little bit differently. So what we would need to do is actually to provision the volume, and in the Linode, for example, in Linode and other clouds it could be different. I can use this Linode block storage retained, the block storage which actually will persist in the cluster, and I need to specifically delete it. It's really good, I think, for such application as Pmm. So when you would like to persist this configuration and metrics. So what I need to do is actually to specify this Linode block storage class. So that's what I do in the value YAML file or by the parameter. So let's do the by parameter, because I actually do not need, maybe by, let's do the values as well. So because I would like to also specify the I would like also specify the password, right? So let's do by values. So here is our file to the 28. I don't need to enable DBaaS. I will not demonstrate that, but I will recommend anyway. So password, some pass, okay, anyway, and storage class, right? Here I need to specify storage class, and I would use this Linode block storage retain. Okay, so let's install Pmm there, but what I would need to do is actually to say Helm that the Kubernetes is running on the Linode instead of locally. And to do so, I need to actually also specify the kubeconfig command, right? So kubeconfig parameter, and do that. Okay. All right, so we have the same situation that we see that Pmm is emitting, right? So let's see what it does. Ascribe pod Pmm 0. Alright, let's pull an image. You also could use selector if you don't know the name of the how the pod will be named. You can use selector. Let me show you how. So you just, instead of passing the name, you pass the selector. And so I would like to select application name Pmm. So remember those labels that we created. That's where you can use them, for example. So it's still pulling. Oh no, yeah, it's already running. Okay, so let me check if it's runs okay. Yep, it's running. So and we could use same procedure, right, as before, to get the IP address and see if we can reach that. You probably also would need to open the port on the firewall for the Linode, etc. But this is a different topic. What I would like to show is actually is that how the HA works out of the box for Kubernetes, kind of. So if we can see a little bit more information. So currently the Pmm runs on this LKE node, and we have a couple of nodes, And our storage, as we've seen, is attached to this, right, to the PMM. So let's kill it on this node and see if it will come up on another node with same information. Let's see. So what I will be doing now is to cordon this node that PMM is running. So I would like to push this node out, right? So first of all, I need to make sure nothing deployed there, and second of all, I would like to drain it. So I would like to move all the containers in pod from this node. Okay. I don't mind. Let's ignore everything. I just would like to simulate kind of if node goes down, for example, right? Sorry. All right, and you can see that it's evicting this pod. So actually I simulated kind of what is going on when node goes down. And let's see. Okay, you see that's initting, and if you'll get all nodes, you can see that this node, one node is not ready, right? You see, right now we have 3 nodes. We have another node that is unavailable, and let's see where the PMM now running. So PMM is initting on another node, not on the one that we have evicted. So what I did, I simulated the issue with the node, and let's see what it does. So currently it's pulling, and what also you can notice here is that it assigned to the new pod, and it's also attached the volume that was already provisioned, right? This is the volume that was provisioned by the previous running pod in the another node. So what we essentially did, we killed the PMM in one node, we killed that node actually, and that made PMM moved to another node. And started on that node, it's actually mounted or get the same storage. So we didn't lose the state. All right, let's wait for that to start again. That's why it's better to preload the images on all nodes. So then PMM will start immediately on the node. Okay, started PMM init, and it's running. Okay. So that's it. So we actually, what we done is we simulated the node failure. So we get the one node out, and PMM successfully migrated to another node using the same storage. So actually it started with the same state on the another node. That's all. So please try out the new method to install the PMM with Helm charts. Documentation is available here on the GitHub and README file, and you can install PMM close to your databases, and as well as use the DBaaS to provision databases same cluster. So actually you have 2-in-1, PMM to monitor your databases and PMM to deploy the new ones. That's all from my side. Thank you for listening. Please try it out and see you around. Bye bye.